Anyway, Ray said, so I decided to set up a challenge between this Chinese badass and Michael Jai White. The classmate agreed to talk to the master into the match, and I would set it up with Michael. Never actually formally meeting Michael, I approached him and asked him if he was interested in sparring the so-called master. Hey guys, I thought I'd share this email. And I asked the guy, of course, he said it's cool to share. So we're going to find out about the history and the legend of Michael Jai White. This is a guy that went to high school with him back in the day. Shared some very interesting stuff, actually commented on one of my videos and said, hey, I went to high school with Michael Jai White. I got some interesting stuff to share if you want to hear it. I said, yeah, please email me. So I'm going to share that with you guys. And, it makes for some interesting stories, but it is cool to dig into the history because, look, Michael Jai White, he is like a martial art movie star. He's very interesting. He's a talented martial artist.
Can I laugh in your face?
So, there's a lot of mystery related to his background, and let's dig deep. It's interesting to hear more about that background. And with all the detail that this email goes into, by the way, there's no reason for the guy to make it up, for one, and for two, there's just, it's too much detail, too much connection there that I do believe what this guy says, Ray, is actually true. So let's dig into it. He said, hi, it's Ray. You asked me to email something pertaining to Michael Jai White. First of all, let me tell you a little bit about me. My name is Ronaldo Garcia, but everyone calls me Ray. I'm not an attention seeker. I'm just an average Hispanic 56-year-old Joe married with 2 sons. Work full-time at Sikorsky's Aircraft in Stratford, Connecticut. They make helicopters for the president and our military. That's cool, man. Sounds like a pretty cool job. And then he said, I live on the Stratford-Bridgeport, Connecticut line. It is in Bridgeport, Connecticut, where I attended Central High School, class of 1985, and it's where Michael Jai White attended. I'm not a large guy. I got bullied a lot in my younger days and always had an interest in martial arts, and am a diehard Bruce Lee fan. Like most of us were. So yeah, man, that's why a lot of us got into martial arts. Well, not only watching guys like Bruce Lee, or for like a younger generation like me, guys like Van Damme kicking ass on screen. A lot of us were that smaller, skinny kid who got bullied, and the martial art movies were empowering, and we needed to become that. That's what I did, essentially. That's what Ray did. So Ray said, but my parents could not afford to pay for martial arts class. I was kind of a reserved kid at high school. Now, I would see Michael in the hallways, and there were times where I would see him in the hallways alone, and he would throw impressive kicks just because. So a lot of guys who get into martial arts, it's like if you're in a boxing, you're like shadow boxing all the time. You did martial arts, you're like throwing kicks all the time. So that just tells me Michael Jai White was just like really passionate about this stuff, Or if you're like guy in the gym training, every gym's got the weird karate guy, and because I can't find that guy at my gym, I'm probably the weird karate guy always doing martial arts in front of the mirror and stuff, because I love it, man. Anyway, he said, I asked others about him and learned a little bit about who he was. One day I had a classmate who I learned real quick was a bullshitter. He told me he met a badass Chinese master, and supposedly this master would do a flip over of fences. And who wasn't a fan of Chinese masters doing acrobats? Yeah, you just assume it's a ninja then, right? If there's an Asian guy doing flips around your neighborhood. So anyway, Ray said, so I decided to set up a challenge between this Chinese badass and Michael Jai White. The classmate agreed to talk to the master into the match, and I would set it up with Michael. Never actually formally meeting Michael, I approached him and asked him if he was interested in sparring the so-called master, and Michael said sure, not in an arrogant way. I would say he had a passion for the martial arts and wasn't afraid to test his skills for further growth. That's so 80s, man, right? In real life and the movies, there's a challenge. Everyone's got to test their martial arts ability. Kind of funny. So the deal was sealed to meet Saturday morning at the YMCA at their gym, 7 or 8 a.m. sharp. I was so excited. I showed up, Michael showed up, and we waited an hour. And to my embarrassment, the Chinese master was a no-show. Come to find out, there was never a real master. So Michael begins to spar with me. He figured, hey, I'm here. But I was no match. I had no martial arts experience. He went light. I apologized to him about the whole situation, and he was like, it ain't your fault. And we went our separate ways. Now, Michael was always competing in tournaments, and I would hear that he always did well. So I met up with a friend from grammar school. He told me he got a black belt from his uncle in Shotokan and would always invite me to train with them. I was a kung fu fan, more so, not a karate guy. But he one day invited me to his house and explained to me how his uncle Matthew Melissi, a Shotokan sensei, just came back from Hollywood. He tried making it as a stuntman, but that it was a tough business. He tried breaking into the movie business, but struggled financially, so he came back to Connecticut to open a school to make a steady income. Yeah, it's very hard to make in Hollywood, of course. So anybody who makes it, you got to give them credit, man. Like even Van Damme struggled. Muhammad Kisi tells that story. A lot of people, at least got to give somebody credit for at least trying and attempting, and obviously the stats, it's not always going to work out. Let me get that font. So he came back to Connecticut to open a school to make a steady income. Now, his uncle Matty, while at Hollywood, trained at Benny Urquidez's gym. Matty got a part in The Last Dragon. He was a guy in the disco scene where the star was surrounded and attacked by different opponents. He was the one in the karate gi and headgear. He was also in The Exterminator. Anyway, I take his nephew Phil up on his offer to join the school, and I loved it. I earned a brown belt, and there was a senior student named Ducci. He was all street. He was friends with Michael White, and they would often train with each other outside the school, so with time, we all kind of would hear who's the who in the martial arts world. See, Matty was an old school tough guy, hard traditional training school. We had a reputation along with other known schools like Masuyama. Michael stopped by to train once with a class. I missed it. I wasn't there that night, so I asked how did he like it, and I was told Michael said it was a tough class. You're always physically pushing yourself, and which you had to dig deep in the mental to finish the class. But let's go back to high school stories. Bridgeport, Connecticut was a high crime place at the time. You had to know where it was safe and where it wasn't. We had approximately 65 homicides a year. Not sure where Michael lived, but he was a street. He knew the street thugs and he was well respected by them, which he actually talks about. So it is kind of cool to hear Ray confirm that about his past. Another guy, Sifu Alan Goldberg, will say that Michael's nickname was Bam Bam back in the day because of all the street fights he got into. So hey man, as far as that part of his background, it does actually seem like there's some truth to it. So one day, a cousin of mine raised in the projects, again, this was before I dabbled in the martial arts, my cousin said, hey, Michael's teaching at a place they called the community center. It was not in a safe neighborhood, but it was no big deal to us. We're about to go walking outside, and there's these thugs that stop us. They were looking to harass us, not allowing us to pass, and out of nowhere, here comes Michael. He tells the guy, what are you doing? In other words, cut the bullshit and let them by. The thug steps back, and we went in and trained for the night. That said a lot about Mike, and I later learned from Michael that there's one thing he can't stand, it's just a bully. Michael was not one to look the other way when anyone was getting bullied. He would intervene and step in for anyone. That's the Michael I have had an honor to know and respect him for that. Now, I've heard Michael is not one to do drugs or drink. He took the martial arts very seriously. He was disciplined, always have been, and trained with anyone who was willing and always respectful about it. Now, of course, there was another side. Knowing thugs and being around them was at a time caught in the middle of the shootings and fights, and if he was with you and you got into a mess, he wouldn't hesitate to throw hands. I've entered a few tournaments and would always see Michael competing. It was just the norm. Years later, a friend would come up to me and said, hey, did you hear about Michael? And I said, no. What's he making, B movies? And then he got a part in the Ninja Turtles, which I believe was his breakout of the B movies, and the rest is history. Michael made it in Hollywood. When martial arts is your bread and butter, you're always on top of your game. Me, on the other hand, I was in on and off martial arts. Now, there have been a lot of controversy going on with Michael, commenting about, beating Mike Tyson and Bruce Lee. I've covered that on the channel. And in all of your interviews with all the who's who, there's one thing that no one talked about that can make a difference in any fight, whether a professional fighter or a non-professional practicing martial arts. And that is killer instincts. Let me explain. At my peak, I was pretty confident in my skills, and if it came to defending myself, I would risk my life in a heartbeat to win or lose. But by nature, I'm not what they called a street mean. I am not an aggressive guy, and confrontations make me nervous. I guess those bully feelings stay deep inside, and you have to dig deep if you want to really hurt someone. That's just me. Not everyone has thug inside, but Michael does, and that can make a dangerous opponent. There's a street fighter that will fight, and it's over when it's over, and then there's a street fighter that will try and kill you because winning's not enough. Michael will match any aggression. Not sure if you're getting what I'm saying. I don't know about all these other cats. I can only tell you what I know about Michael. What I'm about to tell you, I don't want this out because of Michael's career. Well, okay, I'm not going to talk about this part, if Ray doesn't want me to put this out. But he said it was cool to put out the email in general. And I thought it was cool to share some background from a guy that went to high school with him. And Ray, by the way, has a lot more stories about the whole Bruce Lee thing. He trained with individuals certified under Dan Inosanto. He got his hands on copies of Bruce Lee's personal notes and sketches, and he was told that they were taken from Dan Inosanto's personal collection of Bruce Lee. More stories. We should probably get him on for a live video in the future. So anyway, that's some history on the Michael Jai White high school years, and I guess it adds to the legend of Michael Jai White. Kind of cool. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section.